Hello and welcome to this week's video. I'll be using this photograph of my daughter, which I have covered, some Cocoa Vanilla Daydream Ephemera, a blank piece of paper, and I'm using paper from this first edition's paper pack called New Bloom. I am going to start by cutting a left and top and left border, I guess you could say, from this piece of paper that's about 1 inch thick. I'm going to cut all these pieces of paper at the same time. These are sort of more plain patterned paper and a bold purple plain paper. And the cardstock I'm using here is Lime Tree. This is an ivory colour. It's very thick, lovely 12 by 12 paper. So I'm going to be making two triangle shapes here, one at the bottom and one at the top. I'm just thinking about how I'm layering these and where the colours will work together. So I've got the very bold purple and I've got two purples that have a very minimal pattern on them. And then I have those two pieces from the New Bloom collection that I am trying to use a bit of. People say purple is the Voldemort, the one that should not be mentioned and should not be seen. Paper colour. I happen to like purple. It's one of my favourite colours, so I love using it. And so I really enjoyed making this layout. So I'm just thinking about positioning and where I want the patterns and what I'm going to do. These papers here are quite thin, so I'm thinking, well, I can't distress those, so they are going to be fairly flat on the page, although the New Bloom paper I can distress, so you'll see me doing that when I layer it. I'm just going to distress those ones just to give a little bit more texture and a little bit more definition to the page when I start layering them down. So obviously I am going to lose a little bit off each one of these. I'm layering them, and then what I will do is I will cut them after I've got them all layered up. So again, now that I've got some extra pieces cut, I'm just thinking about positioning and where the best use of these patterns are. I don't want the top and the bottom to go symmetrical of one another, so I don't want them to be following a specific pattern the same in the top as they are in the bottom. I just want it to be quite random, and so I'm now looking just for one or two little pieces from this collection to see what might look good at the very bottom of my triangle there. I don't really want anything too bright and too gaudy. I'm thinking about that spotted one, but I just move them around and we'll see what happens at the end. So now I'm thinking, okay, I really need to measure and find out where the center of my page is. So I measure 6 inches up there and the 6 inches from the middle. So from the side and from the top, so that I can figure out where the top of this point needs to go, just so that it covers the page and goes right down to the corner, both on the left and the right hand side. So I'm just marking that there so that when I go back to stick it, I know where it's going to go. And of course that mark doesn't matter, you're not going to see that because I'm going to lay another piece of paper over the top. So as not to get too much glue in the wrong place, I just glued the very point of the triangle and then came back in and glued underneath the rest of it. As I said, the paper is quite floppy, so I knew that it might just land on the paper in the wrong spot. I am coming in here with my Tim Holtz distress tool and using that just to distress the edges so that we give that definition that is nice to have on the page, a little bit of definition, because of course the majority of this is going to be flat. I haven't used any foam dots or anything to lift any of these up. They're just going straight down on the piece of lime tree cardstock. So I'm just layering those ones up. I have covered the photograph. My daughter would prefer me not to use photographs of her, especially photographs of her as she is now. And this one photograph also has her flatmates from last year. So I've covered their faces as well, as I don't have permission to use their images just for security. So I'm just finishing off gluing these down. This glue pot comes from Hobbycraft. It is just a needlepoint glue pot that I put a very sticky like a PVA sort of glue in here, and I keep filling it up because I quite like the nozzle and it squeezes really nicely. Some of my videos I have fought with a few packets of glue where it doesn't come out, or you have to really bend the pot, and this pot is fantastic. So I've cut off the excess and then just trimmed that with my paper trimmer so that it's completely flat and they're completely square along the bottom. And off camera I did exactly the same to the top, so that the top is finished off in a minute. You'll see that I come back to that, but I'm just cutting that extra piece. I was having trouble trying to make sure that it was the same way, so that it didn't look like it was a perfect triangle. So as here I come in with, I've got both the pieces of triangle patination there on the page, and I'm just thinking about, I've got a couple of little offcuts here, whether to use those behind my photograph, just to give some extra colour there in the middle. And then, as I say, I am using the Cocoa Vanilla Daydream collection ephemera. So I've got all of these flowers. I am sticking there. Sometimes I use the strip that you cut off the piece of paper. When you cut the piece of paper, so it's the branding strip, sometimes I fold that up and I use that on my pages because, as we know, it is just like the rest of the paper. It's acid free, so you know it's not going to do any damage to your artworks. They're going to be the same today as they are in 20 years time. So I do like to use that extra strip. It also saves a little bit of money, so I glue it together. I fold it a couple of times and then I glue it, and I use that sometimes instead of things like foam dots and other items. It means that it doesn't end up in the waste paper bin, and it gets used, and it's all about recycling, isn't it? And not damaging the planet, or trying to damage the planet at least as little as you can. So I'm just going through and working out, building up these flowers, and they're going to go around my photograph, and then I'm going to have them sort of cascading into the photograph and then away from the photograph. So into the photograph on the left hand side, coming down from the top, and on the right hand side we'll cascade them down on the right hand side of the piece of paper as well. So I am just working out where I want them. Some will be flatter than others, and where I want them to sort of be raised. So I'm just working that out in order to put my foam dots in the right place, or foam pads in the right place, and to get all this stuck down. So I'm enjoying this page. It was just a nice relaxing page to do. I haven't really done a lot of inking or anything in them. I do come in with some splatters because I've just sort of thought about that. I'm just putting in I've put in a little tag across the top of the paper, and I'm just sort of trying to find all these flowers and put them down, so give me an idea of where I want to go. So here's where I thought, you didn't do anything on the background. So I've got some Shimmerz Orchid colour, which is a lovely purple, and I'm just doing a little bit of splattering. I don't want it too big, so I haven't watered this down at all, and I'm thinking I'm having a little bit of trouble spraying it. I'm dabbing some of those to make them a little bit bigger, just to give a bit more definition, and then I look at trying to flick that a little bit more, and yes, and again now I'm coming back in with doing some more of these flowers, putting those where I want them around the page. And there I have a little banner which says Our Happy Place, which again came from the Cocoa Vanilla Ephemera kit. And I'm just looking at maybe using these rainbows, but I'm not sure. It's just to add a little bit more colour, but actually I get rid of the rainbows because they don't quite work where I want them. So I did put down a butterfly. I think it's a butterfly, although it could be a moth, I'm not sure. I've thinking of putting that down because that goes quite nicely with flowers. I'm not the sort of person that likes to do too much random. You know, if I'm sticking a flower, I'm not going to then come and have a flamingo sticking out the top. I have tried, and I do every now and then try to stretch myself and think, okay, let's just throw a couple of bits of things that are just weird and abstract. But I'm never entirely happy with it. I never feel totally comfortable with it, so it's one of those things that I'll know it's there, and my eye will draw to it whenever I look at a page. So I don't do it very often, but I'm going to try. I need to try, because obviously when you get these ephemera kits, they have lots of different bits and pieces in, some that might go with your theme that you're doing, and sometimes just the most strange and peculiar things. I guess it's a little bit of fun. Some people like it more than others. I am going to try, as I said. So I'm just finishing off layering those in there. I'm kind of almost done. I really wanted to use pretty much most of this. I did have a piece of material that you can see up in the top left hand side that I was thinking about putting on my page, but in the end it didn't really go. I didn't really want to use that much bling. But some bling is appropriate, and a Spiegelmom's sequin is one of those things. So this collection here, I am just taking out a few of the colours here. So I was just sort of trying to cherry pick the colours that I wanted, which is obviously and mostly the greens, and I did sort of want to use some pinks and possibly some purples and possibly some pinks. So I'm just layering these down and thinking what else I might need on this page. But it's pretty much near its end of completion. Obviously not quite near enough for me to put my cat on yet, but I've kind of come in with a few pearls. So you've got the shimmery sequins, and now you've got some flat, raised neutral tones of pearls here on this page as well. And then there's just one more flower, and I noticed there was a flower in that collection there, so stick it on. Less is more, but more is better, as I often say. So now we're putting our cat in, and that is the end of today's page. I hope you've enjoyed this and that it has inspired you to get out there, get using your craft supplies and having some fun. You take care of yourself, and we'll see you again next week. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.